The Alt Fantasy Sports Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is presented by WynnBET. WynnBET is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. From boosted same-game parlays to live in-game odds, WynnBET has what you need to win. Sign up today, bet $100 and get $100 at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/wynnbet. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET. State restrictions apply. We're also brought to you by the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Start your engines with Rod and Cody and get ready to gamble on the Daytona 500 this Sunday.
Nova Production.
And we're back with another episode of the Alt Fantasy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Pelletier. Joining me is Brian Scott's other burner account, the one, the only, Justin Mark. And also joining us is Drew Plitt Sucks, Matt Morse, as well. Welcome, gentlemen. How we doing?
Drew Plitt is number one pick.
Yeah.
101, Drew Plitt.
Man, I've never been – I should have learned – I mean, at least Jordan Teamu started for the USFL, even though the Bandits were kind of bad. But, oh, my God, how can they not be starting Slaughter week one? We're going to get into that more here shortly. But I guess this is now a Drew Plitt fan account. So you heard it here first. And it's going to lead me to the promised land.
I'm sorry, I need to redo that. Drew Plitt's number one fan, Matthew Morse.
As of today, that's right. Yep.
All right, boys, we got some depth chart. We got some other news. Let's talk about some of these surprising things that happened. You know, Justin, you're a plugged in spring football insider. Talk to me about what's going on here.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest surprises were the quarterbacks, which we already kind of buried the lead there. Drew Plitt starting over Kyle Sloter. That one surprised me. I think it surprised a lot of people, really.
I don't think there's anyone that didn't surprise except maybe XFL Jim, who in his depth chart article back in November after the initial draft, you'll remember, check it out on sgpn.com, folks. He did say that he thought Drew Plitt would get, first. He listed him as the first stringer, which I kind of laughed at. I thought XFL Jim was just trying to be kind of like edgy and like different. He knew something we all didn't. Maybe we should get him on one of these pods to guest star or something, because I don't know how he called that one. We should have mentioned that during the draft that we just ran on All Fantasy Sports. But yeah, I can't believe, who knows what's going on behind the scenes, right? Spring leagues do this to us every year. I mean, the three of us have all been through this in one way or another. I just can't believe that team reunited Slaughter and Canella to then not use them week one. So Justin's laughing because they literally were the all-pro quarterback and tight end in the USFL. Reunited on the same, like it almost seemed like they were at an advantage over everybody else, because who else had that kind of continuity, right? Like that was going to be probably the number one connection in the XFL to start, unless there's something we don't know, like injury related, not getting along with the coaches, unable to pick up a playbook. I don't know, but I don't know what your guys' thoughts is, but I'm not sure what went into that kind of decision or what's going on with that coaching staff.
I mean, Plitt was a pretty good athlete at Ball State, so
with average passing numbers.
I agree with the fact that I thought this was Slaughter's job. So it makes you wonder if that knee's not 100% healthy. He played injured towards the end of the year.
I mean, and that could be the big thing, is that Slaughter's just not 100%. And if he's not 100% and he can't move, that's really going to hurt him in a league where you're not sure what the offensive line protection is going to be. Drew Plitt might have just looked more explosive, and he's got playmakers to make plays with. Sal Canella, good offensive line guys like Jordan Smallwood, Keith Ford, lots of players there for them to make plays with.
He's surrounded by a good roster. I mean, we decided last time we were on here that we were a Renegade superfan pod. So, maybe not anymore.
That's okay. Let's bounce around to some of the other news. Justin, what else we got going on here?
Luis Perez winning the starting job over Brett Overpaid Hundley. So another
Tell us how you feel
surprise.
about that one, Justin.
I'm not a Luis Perez fan, as anybody that's listened to my stuff knows, but I'm not a Huntley fan either. So,
Who's your
but it's
preference?
interesting. Yeah, interesting choice either way.
I mean, and the thing there is, it just might be Luis Perez he's a game manager. He's a good game manager. He can move the ball short down the field. He can't push it necessarily as far down the field as you might like, but he's able to understand an offense. He's going to find the open guy and he's going to make a smart play. And right now, that might look better than the explosiveness and athleticism that Brett Hundley brings to the table. So I don't know that this is necessarily like sinking the Brett Hundley ship so much as it's Luis Perez has just had so much time to be embedded in that offense that he might just be the safer option for week one.
And I don't know if you know this, Adam.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know if you know this, Adam, but Perez taught himself football watching YouTube.
Oh, God. How many times are we going to hear that?
I think it's going to be at least 4 times on one broadcast.
Ooh, do you guys want to set the line and bet on it? We are. Oh, wait, this isn't a gambling pod. Never mind. No, I almost want. So, how long has Hundley been in camp? Has it even been a month? I mean, I know he's.
No, it's only been like 2-3. It's only been like 3 weeks.
2 weeks.
So that's probably playing into this, I'm guessing. And like Adam said, I mean, Luis Perez's biggest strength is he doesn't really turn the ball over. I mean, I know I don't remember how many games he solely started for the Generals in the USFL last year, but I know he started quite a few and he played in every game. He did split time with DeAndre Johnson, obviously, until he was battling injury. But I think Perez only threw like 1 interception. Like he had decent game manager numbers. Like he had I think his completion percentage was in the mid 60s. I wish I had the stats right in front of me. I should have looked him up before talking about him. But I want to say he threw something like 12 touchdowns and 1 interception. Like he was very efficient. It just, like Adam said, doesn't jump off the page athleticism wise.
Yeah, he had a good completion percentage. However, watching him in that last playoff game when the blitz was on, he cannot escape the
left
pocket.
A lot to be desired.
Yeah. So
I mean, and that's the biggest thing with him. I mean, you saw him be limited in the USFL. I mean, he was in a platoon with DeAndre Johnson, and
which speaks volumes.
DeAndre Johnson looked like the better quarterback. DeAndre Johnson has a better arm, better escapability. Luis Perez just had the ability to dink and dunk his way down the field. And it's been that way since he was in the AAF. He wasn't anything spectacular in the AAF either.
He makes for a really good, I mean, not to state the obvious here, but he makes for a really good QB2 for this type of team. And maybe this is the type of situation they envision for him, right? Like they like Hundley's ceiling. He's not ready yet. And they don't think Perez will lose them the game in week 1 and probably has a good grasp of the offense and will at least get the ball into the hands of the playmakers for now. I mean, the Vipers are another team that are just like loaded playmakers wise, right? I mean, we've got Martavis Bryant, and I just think they don't need to do much more than I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a lot of screens and such in week 1. But I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think the over under is for? I mean, how soon are we going to see Hundley? Is it going to be week 2, week 3?
I think you're going to see him this week.
You think another DeAndre Johnson type thing?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
WynnBET is the official online sportsbook of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. WynnBET is active in a bunch of states, and there are a ton of ways to win, including live betting and same-game parlays, a.k.a. WynnBET's Build Your Own Bet. Great promos, odds, and payouts are happening right now at WynnBET. Ready to play? Sign up today to receive a special offer. Bet $100, get $100. Limited to state availability. And, of course, if you hit the biggest long shot parlay of the week, you get a $1,000 free credit. There's so much to choose from. All you have to do is head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET so they know we sent you. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where play through WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
The other big quarterback thing, because we got Danucci, McCarron, Tamu, we all kind of expected them to start. The Guardians, though, listing Paxton Lynch or DeAndre Francois or Quentin Dormady as their starting quarterback. So that's interesting.
We talked about it, previously, and it's really just that there's always a dumpster fire spring football quarterback situation. There is.
And this is
you had the Express and the AAF. You had the Guardians in the XFL / Vipers in the XFL / Dragons in the XFL. And in the USFL, we had the Michigan Panthers and
Maulers.
the Pittsburgh Maulers.
Yeah.
And now we have the Orlando Guardians again. And we also might have the San Antonio Brahmas, but we'll touch on them in a minute. 3 oars. I mean, Ken Paxton Lynch, a former first-round pick, beat out guys who weren't even drafted is the big question.
You would hope so. I mean, he's got one of the higher pedigrees, I think, in the XFL, being a former first-round pick for the Denver Broncos. Obviously couldn't cut it there. I know that's a pick was that an Elway pick? He was there at that time.
That was
right?
an Elway pick.
Gosh.
The more Paxton Lynch flames out in spring leagues, the worse John Elway looks.
He looks terrible. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess these spring leagues just keep being wooed by his. I mean, he is an athletic dude and he's huge, right? Like if you were to build what you want your quarterback to look like, it's Paxton Lynch, and then he gets on the field and throws up all over himself, and we are reminded why he flamed out at the NFL and was in a pseudo quarterback competition for the Michigan Panthers last year in the second worst offense in the league. Were they worse than the Maulers, or were the Maulers? I can't remember.
No,
the
Maulers were worse.
I thought so, but I mean, the Panthers weren't too much better. I mean, I don't think any of us thought Lynch was getting the starting job out of the gate. I think we kind of thought this was going to be another one of those situations, like Adam said. It was going to be a dumpster fire. When we were trying to create our projections going into the season, we didn't know necessarily who to project to take the most snaps. We kind of were like, okay, let's divvy it up a bit. Let's figure out how many games we think each of these guys are going to start. But I think all of us are in agreement that we thought Lynch was going to be the kind of guy where week 4 or 5 or something, it's not going well. They're like, all right, let's insert the athletic guy in there and see if he can, rekindle some of that old college skill out of Memphis. But I guess maybe he showed something in camp. Maybe he's finally figured it out. I tend to doubt it, but I guess I shouldn't be talking too much crap about Paxton Lynch since he's now on my SGPN XFL fantasy team, because it's not that I don't love Drew Plitt. I love him, but don't know that he's going to keep the job.
But more interesting for the Guardians for me is that Eli Rogers is on the second string, as is Dantes Bird. These are guys who had, in Eli Rogers' case, NFL experience, and Dantes Bird XFL experience previously, and they're buried on the depth chart behind Charleston Rambo, Stephen Guidry, and Logan Carter. Were we wrong thinking
Eli Rogers?
I mean, can Eli Rogers play football anymore? This is an honest question. He no-showed on the Tampa Bay Bandits.
I know.
Yeah.
That was my favorite stack going into the USFL season last year was Te'amu and Rogers. You see how that
went. What we're hearing is fade Matt's favorite.
All of my favorite stacks fade him. Slaughter and Cannell is obviously not going to work week 1. So
or is it the 3D chess play, because Slaughter takes over in the second half and just balls out?
Yeah, I'm a mastermind. You're right.
Very possible. And it's hard for Rogers to beat out a guy named Rambo. I mean, guys named Rambo, you got to just automatically start.
Hold on. His first name is Charleston, though.
True.
All right.
True.
Well, his parents
balances the Rambo out.
They were, as a baby, they were like, we want him to get an education. We don't want him thinking he's got to be in the jungle surviving. Let's even out the name. Hopefully he doesn't bring a machete on the field, but this is the XFL. So,
but also after that Guardians, roster, we see Jermaine Martin jump out to the first, be the lead back right here. And Jermaine Martin is a guy a lot of people have had their eyes on, out of North Carolina A&T, very talented back. Really, 2021 he struggled a little bit, but in 2019 he was absolutely prolific. 1,400 yards rushing, and 23 touchdowns to go with 44 yards receiving through the air. He was just an absolute monster for the Aggies there. And, if he can rekindle that, you got to be excited about Jermaine Martin, right?
I would be, because I don't know that they're going to put the game in Paxton Lynch's hands. You know what I mean? This might be a ground and pound offense coming out in week 1. So, I think early on in the season, early on in the offseason, I don't know that we were high enough on Martin, but this depth chart kind of confirms that the offense is probably going to run through him out of the gate. So sneak peek probably will be talked about in my DFS content. But yeah, I'm also intrigued by Cody Latimer. I think he was one that J Mark and I had talked about early on in the offseason. How are they going to deploy him? Their depth chart, I'm not sure if it's a little ambiguous. They don't really list a tight end. They just kind of list their looks like HYXZ receivers. They've got Latimer and Becker in the H. So I'm guessing, what is that, a tight end slot role? What do we think there? Is that kind of like an H back? What are they doing with that?
Yeah, it's going to be a tight end slash slot role. For
cool.
Sure.
I mean, that's kind of what we were hoping when
Yeah.
we were talking about Latimer in an earlier pod. We were like, okay, they've got him converted to tight end. To me, that projects as like a possession slot receiver, which I think having Cody Latimer in that role in that offense is great. Another guy with a lot of NFL experience with the Denver Broncos. He never lit the league on fire, but I think he was in the league, 6-7 years, kept finding his way on the rosters for the Broncos and Giants. I think he got more playing time with the Giants, kind of in that 3-4 receiver role. But he's an intriguing one for me too, especially as far as PPR value goes. I think I mentioned that earlier in an earlier pod too, but I'm even more intrigued seeing where they have him listed now in kind of that H role.
Yeah, for sure. I'm high on Cody Latimer. If you haven't done your draft yet, which I got one Thursday and one Friday, so it's very possible you haven't drafted yet. This is the only team that's got 2 running backs. So we talk about spring football, how it's so hard to determine
That's a great point.
who to draft because they'll mix them all in there. This only has 2. So if you get a chance to draft Jermaine Martin, I think that is a guy that is going to be an RB1 all year unless he has an injury.
I mean,
and Devin. Yep, I was just going to say Devin Darrington's probably the best handcuff then, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and Devin Darrington wasn't bad. He wasn't great. He wasn't light the world on fire. But coming out of Harvard, then going to play at Virginia, wasn't, again, didn't light the world on fire. 5'9", 205, little smaller, but he has the ability to make plays with the ball in his hands, and not a terrible pass catcher, but it feels like there's a lot of upside in this backfield is what I'd say.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
So, and just continuing with the depth charts that we've seen, we saw the Seattle Sea Dragons now too. We got confirmed that Ben DiNucci is going to be the starter over Steven Montez, to no one but Justin's surprise that Ben DiNucci is going to be the starter there. And, they're running 4 wide in that June Jones offense with Josh Gordon, Jakor Pearson, Blake Jackson, and Juwan Green. So who's going to be Ben DiNucci's number 1 target? Who's the guy you're really looking at there in Seattle?
I think it's hard not to want to see Josh Gordon do well. Just after he did so well in the NFL, and then he fell out of that because of his issues, off-field issues. So for me, it's hard not to root for him and to hope like he can come in here and show that he can still play. So that's kind of who I'm high on. I put him in my first DFS stack with the Nooch, and they're going to throw the ball. So these are all guys that I think are valuable fantasy pieces.
Yeah, I'm when it comes to the Sea Dragons offense, I'm looking at Juwan Green and Josh Gordon. Definitely, I think those are going to be the 1-2s in the offense. They seem to be listed near the top of the depth chart everywhere we look. There's going to be so many passes to go around in that offense. You can't go wrong targeting any of the top 3-4 receivers. I think even in their earliest depth chart, they list 4 wide, no tight end. Like they're just going to be an air raid running gun offense. And I think just getting a piece of them is the way to go. I am curious to see, did we get any price on DFS yet? I'd love to check that out. I'd love to see where Josh Gordon and Juwan Green fall when the DFS pricing comes out.
Josh Gordon's at like 9,100. I don't know for Juwan Green for sure.
Okay. So Gordon he's pricey right now. That might be
name recognition.
Yeah, they usually keep name recognizable guys priced high.
Yep.
In this. So, and now just looking over at the Battlehawks, nothing maybe shocking, but we've got Darius Shepard and Marcel Aitman top in the depth chart with Hakeem Butler and Austin Prohl backing them up. Only 2 wide receivers listed. One of the few teams that's just listed 2, an X and a Z with no slot receiver. And the tight end Giovanni Haskins is currently listed as the tight end 1.
Over Jordan Thomas currently.
Yeah. Over Jordan Thomas and Jake Sutherland.
Wow. Yeah, didn't see that coming. We were on the Jordan Thomas train there earlier in the season. This is spring football at its best. And Brian Hill is listed as RB1 currently.
Yep, backed up by Kareem Walker and Mateo Durant bringing up the rear.
Yeah, I think Brian Hill's kind of your starting running back as well as short yardage. Mateo Durant is a pass catcher. So I think he'll be used on like passing downs. But yeah, Brian Hill's a guy that really good in Wyoming, bounced around the NFL, played for the Falcons. That I think he's got a chance of being one of the better backs in this league, especially on an offense that I think the Battlehawks and Anthony Beck, I think they're going to run the ball. I mean, they're coached by a tight end. I think they're going to run the ball.
I mean, he was quoted as saying that it was going to be kind of a West Coast scheme, looking like a Sean McVay-esque offense. So I'm curious if Bruce Gradkowski can deliver something like that.
Right.
I mean, they might have the best quarterback in AJ McCarron, and they might have the best line. I just don't know if they have the coaching and the weapons around them to make that happen.
Agreed.
A West Coast scheme, quarterback by AJ McCarron could be intriguing. It's just how well is it going to be implemented, right? This, I think we had talked about in an earlier pod, is can the talent win out over the inexperienced coaching? Yeah, they're one of those teams I'm really interested to watch. I think they're still near the top of like betting odds. Like everyone's got, I think they're
the favorite,
the best odds to win. Yeah.
Yep.
That might be an AJ McCarron line. I don't know. I'd be curious to see what Bama Boy does. But yeah, this Brian Hill news I'm very intrigued by. I hadn't considered him as a starter. Like Justin said, really productive college career, actually better than I thought. At 3 years at Wyoming, he rushed for over 4,200 yards and 35 touchdowns. And he's not a slouch in the receiving game either. I know the presence of Mateo Durant might, suppress that value a little bit. But depending on, I don't know, Justin, do you have the pricing right in front of you? What is Hill sitting at for DFS pricing right now? I'm intrigued by him this week.
I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah. That might be a nice sleeper week one.
And thinking about this offense, I'm also looking at Giovanni Haskins, listed as the starter. But the question is he listed as the starter because he's a better blocker? And we're going to see more of Jordan Thomas in a receiving role, and we're going to see a clear delineation between the blocking and the receiving tight end. But if Giovanni Haskins is going to be the receiver, AJ McCarron is a smart quarterback. If his tight end's open, he's going to look for him, and tight ends can be a mismatch against less structured defenses in the XFL. So we could be looking at Giovanni Haskins. Maybe next week we're looking at Giovanni Haskins, and we're like, who thought he was going to be the breakout star of week one?
The Donald Parham of XFL.
Donald Parham of the XFL too.
Is it going to be weird if the best quarterback in this league is a 32-year-old guy?
No,
That's
but
weird.
I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen because we've seen the veterans before, and they flame out in spring football. When we think of, I think of like the Matt McGloin of the XFL one, guys like that, where it's
Murray too, I think.
Yeah, when it's like we think he's going to be great, but he just can't do it. Like he doesn't have the physical talent. He might have the head to do it, but he can't make plays with what's in front of him. He's just trying to over anticipate, and his players can't over anticipate. I mean, he had one of the best receivers, same with Cardell Jones in DC the last time around. Rashad Ross and Mikhail McKay were both dominant receivers in the AAF, and they just were massively underutilized in the XFL because of bad quarterbacking. And it's just a tragedy to see something like that happen when you have guys that are that talented.
One thing I would say, if you plan on drafting AJ McCarron, handcuff him with Manny Wilkins if you want a handcuff quarterback, because that's a guy who he played with Green Bay for a while. Athletic and good quarterback that I feel like could fit a West Coast scheme very well, and maybe even play better than old man AJ McCarron. I don't mean to offend all of us that are older than him. But
I was gonna say, oh no.
But I'm also not in any shape to go sling the rock on the field, so I'll call him an old man on the field.
There you go. I mean, he did almost win a playoff game. I mean, it's not like he didn't do any, like he wasn't Brett Hundley backing up Aaron Rodgers for 4 years and doing nothing else.
How many years ago was that,
started
though?
games? Yeah, well, 32 is the new 22 or something. I mean, I mean, Adam could very well be right. We've seen the story. It's oldest time, right? Like older quarterbacks that, with NFL experience, we think are going to be a lot better than they actually are. I'm just not ready to sell AJ McCarron yet, given that he wasn't just a backup quarterback that sat holding a clipboard. I mean, that was what he did the majority of the time, but I think he started like half that season for Cincinnati, where they went to the playoffs and were like, it was like a 1-score playoff game. And he didn't play poorly. They just lost the game. So I'm still intrigued by him. I might be talking him up because I did take him very high in some drafts, but I'm not ready to sell him yet, though your Manny Wilkins handcuff idea isn't a bad one. I think handcuffing your quarterback in these spring leagues, if you have the roster spot for it, not the worst idea.
I mean, it's not terrible, but I'd much rather take another bite at the apple with a flex player. I'd rather take a depth running back or receiver, because at the end of the day, I think one or two of these teams is going to utilize a quarterback in their conversion packages. So you're going to be able to stitch together 6, 7, 8 points out of the quarterback position. I really look at DC with Eric Dungy, and I think that's a team that's going to do something like that and utilize Hammer De'Eric King more on conversions. And I'd rather trot that out and have another bite at a superstar, another bite at the spring football superstar apple from the flex positions.
Speaking of DC and flex positions, Puka Williams listed as a running back and wide receiver. So they're going to get him involved.
They only have 2 running backs on their roster right now. They have Abram Smith and Raekwon Armstead. So you got to know that. So Puka Williams as a wide receiver, sure, but he's able to get running back snaps. That's good depth chart and good roster management on DC's part.
Yeah, for sure. I just think he's definitely somebody I'm looking at for later rounds because I think he'll get involved a lot.
Yeah, he's going to be great PPR value potentially, right?
Yeah.
Depending on his role. Like, is he going to play kind of a third down back slot receiver kind of gadget role? I mean, that could be really valuable in a spring football offense. I'm intrigued.
It's also interesting. Josh Malone was a late addition to the Defenders roster, but he appears to be buried.
He does.
On the depth chart, almost at the tail end of it for the receiver room. And you got to wonder, there are guys who are not going to be factors at all. Guys are going to play, but are they going to be factors? And I don't know that Josh Malone's a guy. There was some hype and buzz around him, but I don't know that he's anybody that I'm excited about. What I am excited about is Abram Smith being listed in the XFL's North Division preview. That's great to see. You love to see him. We were really in on him coming out of Baylor, and it's really great to think about how he could be really huge for the Defenders and what we think is going to be a run-heavy offense.
Yeah. I mean, we were high on him from the get-go, and rightfully so, right? So nice to see him featured, and clearly this offense. I mean, I guess not clearly, but it seems like the offense is going to run through Smith. I mean, here's to hoping we see the 2020 version of Te'amu and not last year's USFL version of Te'amu. Maybe this roster and coaching is better. I mean, I'm trying not to have my heart broken again. I was so excited for Te'amu and the Bandits last year and just got let down in so many ways. I don't know, Justin, convince me that Te'amu is going to be better this time around. Please
2 weeks. Me. I gave him on the XFL Gambling Pod. I gave him 2 weeks, and then Derek King's the starter. He's going to lead the league in turnovers. And then Derek King's the starter.
Make me feel better, Justin. In 2 weeks.
That's just my feeling, but I could be way off because
there's potential in there, and there was a reason
I'm biased against Te'amu, so
I know you are. And
it's just the key's going to be is will they start to unleash his running ability, because that's really what made him so dominant. There was they had such a strong running game that Te'amu could really pick his shots. What they're missing, though, that St. Louis had is they lack big-bodied receivers in DC, and that has me nervous. When you look at the St. Louis Battlehawks roster, it looked more like they were fielding a basketball team than a football roster, and they were balanced across the board with guys like Keith Mumphrey, and DeMornay Pearson-Allen, guys like that they would get the ball to downfield, that would get open and could make contested catches. I don't know that DC has this, and the Bandits certainly didn't have it last year. And when he doesn't have a guy who can make contested catches,
that's a good point.
Jordan Te'amu really struggles to be effective throwing the ball.
It's going to be interesting to see what they scheme up, right? Because it looks like wide receiver 1 going in is Jaquez Azard, who has potential in and of himself, but he's a 5'9" speed guy, right? So like you said, not one of those big body contested catch guys. And so are we going to see Tampa Bay Bandits 2.0? I hope not. I hope that they figure out, I mean, it'd be great to see him utilize, like you were saying, some more read option, short screens type pass stuff, just like utilize that athletic ability and make, safe, efficient throws and get that offense going. We'd love to see it. Fingers crossed. I'm not heavily invested in Te'amu this year, but it'd be nice to see Justin be wrong. Just kidding.
I'd like to be
Love you,
right.
Justin.
Thank you. A part of it's just because I think Derek King is a better athlete, and I think he's a better quarterback. So I think he deserves a shot. Now, who's not to say he doesn't get it, though? I mean, this is spring ball. They mix things up a lot. So,
I mean, we could see some 2 quarterback systems. We've seen it before, right? So who knows where that's going to come into play and in what situation.
Yep. Speaking of 2 quarterback systems, sorry, Adam, not to take
No, go ahead.
Conversation here, but the Brahmas with Jack Cohn starting, that doesn't feel permanent to me. It feels like Reed Sinnott or Juwan Pass are going to get involved in that offense. Jack Cohn being kind of your statue quarterback, Juwan Pass and Sinnott both being better athletes. That one surprised me. I don't know. He must have looked good in training camp, but it does surprise me that he was named the starter.
I mean, but Jack Cohn is a guy who comes from, he's played Division I football. He's a good passer out of Wisconsin and Notre Dame. He was 18 touchdowns against 5 interceptions in 2019 at Wisconsin, threw for 2,700 yards. Then at Notre Dame in 2021, 3,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's an accurate passer. And this is something that a lot of coaches tend to default to is they want a guy who's going to be accurate. And Jack Cohn might not be mobile, but he can get into the end zone running the ball. 7 touchdowns across his collegiate career, 4 at Wisconsin in his 2019 season, 2 at Notre Dame. 6'3", good size. If he can orchestrate this Brahmas offense, which we think is going to be run heavy, and then pick his shots to the receivers, I think that could be really good. And he could be a breakout star in here, a la a guy like Garrett Gilbert. We think of spring quarterbacks as being mobile runners. Garrett Gilbert was not that, but he is probably the second most successful spring quarterback we have seen behind Taylor Heineke.
That's a name I have not heard in a long
I was just thinking that too. I was like, oh yeah, Garrett Gilbert reference. Let's go. Yeah, I mean, Cohn's shown the ability to throw for, just to chuck it. He threw for 509 yards in the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma State. So it's not like he's necessarily like a dink and duck system quarterback, like Adam was saying. He can chuck it. So maybe we're wrong. I'm not hedging my bets that Cohn is going to be the starter the whole season. With spring football, you just never know. Do we still want to talk about this Brahmas offense? I know Adam's a Jaquez Patrick super fan, and I've seen some Kalen Balash
put some recently. Name on San Antonio. Put some respect on San Antonio Brahmas captain Jaquez Patrick's name,
which is good news that he's captain. That likely speaks volumes about what they.
I think that's huge. That he's.
I do think that's huge. But I just think it's worth talking. I know we've talked about Kalen Balash before and his receiving ability, and I've seen him, highlighted a few times in some articles. I'm just considered. Do you guys have any fear about him eating into Patrick's work? Is this going to be a running back centric offense? Is Balash going to get more receiving work? What do we think? I'm interested in them both fantasy wise. I don't know if anything's changed since the last time we spoke. Are we still Patrick borderline RB1 in the league? Is that still how we're feeling? The captaincy is a big deal.
I think so. I think Balash is more of your change of pace and kind of pass catcher. Same with Calvin Turner. I think Balash and Turner kind of fight each other's production while Patrick continues to be the top dog there. It'll be interesting to see what Hines Ward does with this offense. First time coach. That has me nervous as well for just this offense in general. What are they going to look like with Hines Ward?
Yep.
What I would say is, unlike some of the other teams that just went out and got a bunch of speedsters, the Brahmas went out and said, we going to go get us some jump ball receivers. We going to get us some guys who can get up. TJ Vasher, 6'6", Jalen Tolliver, 6'3", Travis Johnson, 6'4", Landon Akers is 6'1", Fred Brown, 6 foot, and Therese Robertson is 5'10", but that is some big physical receivers. They're going to have an advantage over smaller corners. TJ Vasher at 6'6" could just be an absolute cheat code in the XFL. You got to be looking at him as a key component. And I know also Elise Mack played with Jack Cohn in college, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
So
God.
they're
Here's
gonna
the
have
Slaughter and Canelo connection that I'm not going to get. It was under the radar. It was right in front of me the whole time.
There's
Sorry,
some
Adam.
grown ass men for sure.
he did
at
not.
the
I'm sorry,
receiver.
he did not play with Jack.
Oh, okay.
But they
I
are
thought he
both
did too.
Notre Dame. I thought he did too, but they are both. He's older. He's much older.
Okay. Well, I think the big body thing is actually a great point that you pick up because especially in a league where
Hold
there
on.
might not be as much prep time.
Breaking
What did we
news.
find out? What did we learn?
We
love
have a
breaking news.
Vipers depth chart.
Excellent. Great. Right
Luis
live on the
Perez,
pod, too.
Luis Perez starting, Brett Hundley backing him up, starting receivers, Martavis Bryant, Jeff Bedette, and Geronimo Allison.
I love that.
Look
That is
at that.
a great starting receiver trio.
And Matthew Sexton are the backup receivers. Rod Smith, the starting running back. John Lovett, the number 2.
Oh, no.
DeAndre Torrey, the number 3.
Hope y'all are looking at my projected depth chart I sent you that was in the correct order.
Lead tight end, Brandon Dillon.
Oh, I had that one wrong. I thought Travis Kuntz was going to get that.
Travis Kuntz is listed 3rd on the depth
Third.
I
chart.
may or may not have
Ouch.
just taken John Lovett.
Behind Sean Price.
Oh.
No, I mean, there was a lot of John Lovett hype.
I'm sad. He was my number 1 running back in our last draft just now. I took 2 receivers off the board and Lovett was still sitting there. I was like, oh, great. I still got an RB1. Apparently not.
To be fair, Matt, I sent you this projected depth chart prior
make me feel better.
to our draft. So you had my Rod Smith projection.
I did. I had the inside man himself, and I didn't even utilize him correctly. I'm ashamed of myself. No, this is what makes it fun, right? I mean, that starting receiving trio is really fun.
Sure.
I'm really excited about that.
And they get to be underutilized by Luis Perez.
Thank you for saying that, because I was
Hundley, now the highest paid backup quarterback in the league. Justin is grinning ear to ear.
Absolutely.
No, I mean, like we said, we don't foresee that being permanent. I mean, I actually didn't even consider what Adam said. Maybe we'll see some Hundley packages this week to utilize his athletic ability. But Allison in the slot is really intriguing to me. Brian and Allison, obviously, with their NFL experience, are just huge. That might be the best starting receiver trio that we've seen. I'm trying to think if there's anybody that I think it is. Yeah, I can't think of anybody that. The Sea Dragon's pretty good too, but I think Vipers have the best receiving core.
Looking at week 1 matchups, okay, we've got Orlando and Houston. All right, so Orlando and Houston. How are y'all feeling about your Houston Roughnecks playing against the Orlando Guardians?
I would favor Houston.
Yeah, I feel good about.
We're favoring Houston, but I think this is a state. I think this is a place where, according to some of our models, you're bumping up your Roughnecks by almost 20% over what you expect. And on that same note, you're dropping your expected production out of your Guardians players. And also, I think the QB factor has to drop them as well.
Yeah, I would steer clear of Orlando offensive players this week. I think, especially early on, Houston's a bit of a matchup.
I mean, I think you got to play the 2 running backs just because they're going to get touches and if you take a dart throw to receiver, do it.
That's
because somebody's going to catch the ball because they're going to be down big.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would start Jermaine Martin and Cody Latimer. The rest I would be hesitant at. I know he's a tight end, but I just think he's going to get more of that receiving game.
Yeah. Then we got DC and Seattle. What y'all thinking about that one?
Start those Seattle pass catchers regardless of matchup. That's how I feel about that. They're going to have so much volume. Maybe I'll get proved wrong, but until further notice, if I have the chance to start a Seattle receiver, I'm doing it.
I mean, DC's defense could be able to slow them down. DC is one of the better defensive squads here, and you got to think that might have people slowing them down a bit.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm just thinking week 1, there's still so much left to the unknown that I try to default to what we do know, and I just feel like I can predict volume more than I can predict matchups right now. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm full of crap, but. I just know early on, especially if I'm trying to do like tiebreakers and things of that nature, I know Seattle's volume is definitely going to be higher as far as, pass catching ability goes. So all our leagues are PPR, I think. And that's my default.
Yeah. Then we're going to Vegas and Arlington. What y'all think about that?
Fade Vegas.
Yeah, Drew Plitt, let's go. No, I mean, that's a fun matchup. I wish Slaughter was playing.
I feel really good about Arlington's defense, and I think they're going to have a good. I think they're going to do a good job slowing down the Vegas offense. I mean, I'd really be out, especially knowing Luis Perez is starting. I would really fade your Vegas pass catchers.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, if you drafted Martavis Bryant, it was probably with an early rounder, so it's hard not
Probably
to stop
start
him. But yeah, I agree. If you can fade him, fade him.
And then lastly, we've got San Antonio and St. Think Any thoughts going on there?
I think St. Louis's defense is going to be very good, and I think they're going to overwhelm San Antonio. So I'm on the Battlehawks. Start your offensive players, especially the running backs. I think they're going to control that game on the ground and kind of fade most of Brahmas, but don't fade Jacques Patrick.
Yeah, I think trying to keep it simple. I mean, St. Louis probably is likely favored relatively heavily in that game, so I'm probably starting my offensive playmakers for St. Louis. I know Adam doesn't agree with me, but the McCarron 8-man stack is probably still good week one. I don't know. I try not to overthink it and say, oh, they're going to get up big, so they're not going to throw as much. Just start your studs, like especially in week one, right?
I mean, I just don't know that St. Louis has the ability to get up big. I mean, I don't see an explosiveness. I don't see it. I don't see an explosiveness in that offense. And again, the coaching staff just really worries me. I don't know that a first-time professional play caller's going to be able to hack it. I really
could
don't.
be rough. Early on,
be a Brian Hill game.
It could be clunky. Could be a Brian Hill game. This could be a fun Brian Hill game.
And I don't think San Antonio is bad defensively. And I think that with big physical wideouts, San Antonio could really steal some points and put St. Louis in a position where they have to throw the ball, and they just don't have the ability to do that.
Man, we should do picks before these games and keep track of our
XFL picks will be live on SGPN this week. Don't worry.
There we go. That'll be fun.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Justin, one guy you're starting, one guy you're staying away from this week. Let's hear it.
Oh, I'm staying away from Luis Perez, and I just said it. I think it's going to be a Brian Hill game, so I'm starting Brian Hill.
There we go. Morse.
Adam's not going to like this, but I'm staying away from Jack Cohn until I see more. I mean, there's a reason nobody was – it was a shock that he was even starting. I don't feel that great about that Brahmas offense in general. One guy I'm starting, Abram Smith. I mean, RB1. They're gonna run the rock, and there's a reason he's featured on everything about their offense. So Abram Smith, go for gold.
Listen, Jaquez Smith is the embodiment of the Brahma Bulls. 6'3", power back, gonna power through.
I'm fine starting Patrick.
His Battle Hawks line.
Battle Hacks. That's how you feel about them.
That's right, the Battle Hacks. They're frauds. This ain't your daddy's St. Louis Battle Hawks. This team is fraudulent from top to bottom. I'm telling you right now. I'm starting Jaquez Patrick, and I'm staying away from Jordan Ta'amu in week one. I just love it. I saw him look really bad in Tampa, and I think he's going to look really bad again because they didn't look at what made him successful, and I don't think they'll have learned their lessons. So, again, that's Brian Scott's burner, Justin Mark. That's Drew Plitt's #1 fan, Matt Morse, and I am Adam Pelletier, signing off from the Alt Fantasy Podcast.
See you.
We'll see you next time.
Nova Production.